Can you hear me? I think it's 9:45, and I don't think we're going to have any more fire drill noises. So let's start. Good morning, or bad morning, I guess I should say. I'm Sydney Stern, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Women Writing Women's Lives 25th Anniversary Celebration Conference. We're pleased to see so many new faces and welcome back so many old friends, and also to see so many of our members here. Seminar members have red bordered name tags, so if you have a question about the seminar, ask someone with a red name tag. We have a very full schedule, and needless to say, the fire drill cut us down by 15 minutes. So we're going to go fast and have a lot of content tightly. We don't usually begin so dramatically as we did today, but we factored in time for questions. We have mics on both sides of the aisle, so after each presentation, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, make your way over to one of the mics. Let me also remind you that this conference is being live streamed and recorded, so if you ask a question or speak, you're implicitly giving your permission to be quoted. Eventually, we hope that recording will be linked to our website. Because our schedule is so tight, we agreed that I wouldn't spend any of my allotted time thanking people. As we have with the speaker bios and panel descriptions, we've used the written program to thank a few people from the outside of the seminar. But as you can imagine, many of our members have put in a great deal of time and effort putting this event together. As we agreed, they shall remain nameless with a couple of exceptions, so thank you to those I cannot name. However, Julia Van Haften put together this slideshow you have been watching, which we hope communicates some of the depth and breadth of our members' work. The slides include only books written during the last 25 years by women who have been members of the seminar at some point, and only those of their books that are about women or have women as among their subjects. As for the other name, there is no way I am not going to single out Dorothy Helly, who chaired this event. This is Dorothy. We started talking about doing something more than 2 years ago, and as you can imagine, no one wanted to chair it. So finally, Dorothy said, okay, I'll host the first planning meeting and no more. And yet, here we are 2 years later, under Dorothy's uniquely qualified and unflaggingly cheerful leadership. This undertaking seems to have an infinite number of moving parts, from cups and coffee service to name tags and publicity, from fire drill preparation to deciding on the subjects of our panels, the composition of our panels, and even the description of the panels that appear in your program. There was no detail too small for Dorothy to oversee or plan or, in many cases, take care of herself. The conference seemed to grow to such proportions that I think the only way Dorothy was able to carve out a bit of time to work on her real work, her own book, was to get on a ship with her husband at the end of the summer and go out to somewhere in the North Atlantic. And even then, that worked only when the rest of us stopped sending her emails. So this is a quick and unauthorized but very heartfelt thank you to Dorothy Helly from all of us here. Applause again. Well deserved. Our keynote speaker today is Deirdre Bear, who co-founded this seminar with Carolyn Heilbrunn, and she will describe its origins when she speaks this afternoon. But before we begin, I'll talk a bit about the seminar today. First, our mission statement. It is on our website, www.writingwomenslives.org. The web address is in your written program, but the mission statement is not. And I believe it will put the entire day into context. Like all things meant to last, it was hammered out collectively. And I'm going to read it, not because it's long, it's only 3 sentences, but because we have tried to pack a lot into those sentences. They are meant to be read, and if I tried to summarize them, I wouldn't be doing them justice. The places, cultures, and communities women live their lives change, as do women's roles, status, interests, and opportunities. Our purpose as a group is to identify these changes, understand their impact, and explain and portray the complex realities of women's lives. In researching and writing biographies and memoirs of women, we hope to call attention to the reciprocal dynamics between our subjects and society, find new ways of looking at and presenting women's stories, and ultimately influence the way women's stories are perceived and written. And what do we do to accomplish this laudable mission? We have about 70 members writing memoirs or biographies. We meet once a month from October through May, plus a luncheon at the end of the year, usually in June. Along with a number of CUNY co-sponsors, we also host 2 lectures a year, open to the public, in which one of our members discusses her work in progress. Because of the conference, we are not having one this fall, but Ruth Franklin, who is on one of this morning's panels, will be speaking on March 14th in one of the rooms upstairs. Our website should have the details closer to the time. We begin our meetings with a go-around, in which each of us gives our names, the projects we are working on, and if the occasion calls for it, updates or announcements. I believe this contributes to what has been for many of us an unexpected benefit of the seminar. Writing is a lonely occupation, and members often always join for professional enrichment. It is hard to find shop talk when you're alone in a room with a computer most of the time. But we find something else as well, and that is community. I don't only mean networking, though there is certainly that, and it is valuable, nor do I mean friendship, though many of us have enjoyed forming those as well. During the go-around, we hear good news like, I found an agent, or I've got a contract, or I've just turned in my manuscript. And we hear bad news like, my editor just left and I don't know who's going to do my book. Or my publisher was just sold, or worse, went out of business, and I don't know what's going to happen. But we also hear pub data's in a couple of weeks, and here is the book, which then gets passed around to great applause. In other words, in addition to the stimulation of the programs, the seminar creates a community of colleagues that many of us otherwise lack, and we revel in the opportunity to be among women who are as interested and, yes, as obsessed as we are with the same subjects that seem to bore everyone else. Both during our sessions and afterwards, when many of us go out for a group dinner, we spend hours discussing all kinds of questions, from political and philosophical issues to the minutiae of citation formats, endnotes or footnotes, and what to put in them, or whether to call people in our book by their first or last name. By the time any of our members' books reach publication, they feel like our books too, and we share in the triumph. The sessions themselves focus on themes, issues, approaches, and methods, and feature one or more speakers drawn from both within the seminar and from outside. Here are a few examples. On research, guest speaker Martha Hodes talked about finding and interpreting sources for 19th century women. To write The Sea Captain's Wife, about a white woman who married a black sea captain, she tracked down leads from 500 family letters. In Taking an Elastic View of a Life, another guest, Kathy Curtis, described her approach to pacing the narrative in her biography of Grace Hartigan. She slowed down and went into great detail during Hartigan's productive years and dispatched the later years much more quickly. On memoir and collaboration, a group of 3 women called the Redheads, poet Paige Darty Delano, fiction writer Ellen Geist, and playwright Kathy Lessard, describe working on a collective memoir about their experiences in a national Maoist organization. On writing for a slightly different genre, Tanya Bolden, who wrote biographies of W.E.B. Du Bois, George Washington Carver, and Martin Luther King, talked about the challenge of writing biography for young readers. On a theme, several of our members collaborated on a session about the history of the women's suffrage movement. Jill Norgren, who founded the website www.herhatwasinthering.org, talked about women who ran for office even before the vote for women was won. Louise Bernakow, who has written extensively on suffrage, described ways in which the story changes when one looks beyond the most famous suffrage leaders. Donna Munker discussed the impact of the movement on the life of her subject, Sarah Bard Field, a suffragist and poet. We also tackle nuts and bolts kinds of issues, like current trends in publishing, publicizing our work, using electronic media, dealing with contracts or agents or editors, legal issues like fair use in quoting our sources, many issues around letters. What can we quote? What can we believe? What can we infer? Letters tend to be particularly important for writing about female subjects because other sources of information are often scarce or non-existent. Utilizing archives, building an internet platform, getting grants, residencies, fellowships. 2 seminar members recently led a session on living sources. Allison Gilbert, a print and television journalist, suggested methods and resources for ferreting out hard-to-find interview subjects and embargoed information. And Carol Asher, a longtime author, described interview techniques she has used to encourage subjects to cooperate. We also schedule 1 problem-solving session a year in which members present challenges that they either have solved or would like some help with. For example, structuring a narrative around more than one subject, negotiating the tension between history and biography, dealing with too much research material, dealing with too little research material, organizing research material online, keeping track of chapter drafts and changes and citations as we proceed with revisions. A few years ago, I presented a problem, and 2 of the members whom I most respect had diametrically opposite opinions about how I should handle it. As a result, we had, as they say, a lively discussion, and I came away with even more questions. But that was a good thing, because questions really are the point here. It is probably fair to say most of us joined Women Writing Women's Lives seeking answers. We hoped that other writers who were facing or had already dealt with similar issues could offer us solutions, or at least suggestions that might lead us to solutions. And they do. Suggestions and solutions do emerge. But what also evolve are ideas for approaching the material that in turn prompt more questions. If you look at the descriptions in the program of the presentations, you'll see many question marks and even the word questions. We are sharing some of our answers to the who, what, where, how, and whys of our work today. But these are only snapshots. Our inquiries continue. We go on asking ourselves, what are our assumptions? What are our choices? Might there be a better way to tell our stories? And that is what we hope you will take away with you today. More questions. So, welcome. We're going to launch right into our first panel.